South West One, I think, was the brainchild of a former chief executive of Somerset County Council, and I think he felt that he would get lots of other authorities to come in, and he had a famous row with his opposite number in Exeter, in Devon County Council, because he thought, well, you've let us down by not backing this project. And he said, you don't think I'm going to sack people in Exeter, so the jobs can be moved up the road to Taunton. And so I think, I mean, in the end, the whole South West One project collapsed, and the Somerset County at least took the work back in-house again. I imagine Avon and Somerset would have done the same. So clearly it was a flawed model. Otherwise it would still be with us.
There are several of these sorts of networks or business networks that Sue Mount Stevens' husband's part of. There's a local enterprise partnership, Business West, which he chairs. There's things like the Institute of Directors, the Chambers of Commerce, and of course the good old merchant venturers. What do you make of these business groups' influence on the city, Steve? I think it's probably increased, and I think it's probably increased because of the mayoral system, because I think some of these people were lobbyists for that system. You've got executive power. I mean, we spoke earlier about executive power in a local authority being in the hands of a leader in cabinet. Well, the mayoral system took it one stage further, and all the executive power is now vested in one individual. And it's one individual who's had quite a long association with, amongst others, the merchant venturers. I mean, I suppose Bristol's not unlike most cities in that there is quite a strong lobby of what you might call, I used to call them T-gag, the great and the good. And I don't think we're any different to lots of other places in that regard, but it certainly is long-lasting. And as you say, the merchant venturers goes back hundreds of years, which, the average Chamber of Commerce or Business West type organisation is usually more recent. Well, also, yeah, I mean, it goes back a long way to the 1400s. Actually, the merchant venturers themselves don't, but the Bristol merchants do. And of course, they were involved in financing the trip to where America was discovered, even though it had already been discovered by quite a lot of millions of Native Americans beforehand, which I find a bit of an irritating term, so I shouldn't really use that. But I mean, obviously, it's used generally even teaching kids still. We discovered America, this kind of thing. So the merchant venturers seem to be at the heart of a lot of this, because you'll find quite a lot of them on these various groups. As I was saying, Institute of Directors, Business West, the local enterprise partnership. They are appointed, I understand, apart from the council leaders, by these business bodies. So let's have a listen now back to the mid-1990s, late 1990s, to the old days when HTV used to make documentaries. And here's James Garrett's little extract from his documentary he made at the time, which you can view online, all about the merchant venturers.
We've nothing to hide. We're not a secret society. We're working as an organisation with the best endeavours of a community at heart.
This table has been laid for one of the grandest and most exclusive banquets to be held in Bristol this year. Most people didn't even know it was happening. It's the annual audit dinner of the Society of Merchant Venturers, probably the most influential people in the city. This is the first film ever to be made about a previously secretive organisation which has played a leading role in the city's affairs since the Middle Ages.
The Society of Merchant Venturers began as the corporate voice of the traders who made Bristol the country's second biggest port. Its members profited from the slave trade and earlier had financed the voyage which led to the colonisation of North America. For centuries, the Society ran the port on behalf of the City Council, becoming wealthy through the taxing of ships and goods. When this privilege ended in the 19th century, and along with it the importance of Bristol as a port, the merchants might have collapsed, as did similar groups elsewhere in Britain. They didn't. To this day, Bristol's biggest companies have a significant factor in common. Half the 8 board members at the Bristol and West, the 10th largest building society, are merchant venturers, including Christopher Thomas, President Sir John Wills, and Chief Executive John Burke. Mr. Thomas and Sir John are also directors of the Bristol Waterworks Company, 1 million customers across the West. In addition, Sir John is Deputy Chairman of the Bristol Evening Post Company, publisher of the West's biggest-selling local newspaper.
Bristol's other major employers like DRG, Imperial Tobacco and the Bristol Aeroplane Company also drew many of their directors from the same small pool, while they were locally owned. These prominent businessmen also play a leading role in the city's social, educational and political life. Many are even related to each other. Perhaps it's no surprise that the merchant venturers are referred to, albeit jokingly, as the Bristol Mafia.
Well, that's an extract from James Garrett's HTV documentary back in the late 1990s about the merchant venturers. It's one of the West Eye View programmes. Old Labour Oxford economist Martin Summers. Steve's hinting there that actually some of these business elites are even more powerful under the mayoral system, what with the mayor being a former merchant venturer, than they were beforehand.
Well, as Adam Smith said in The Wealth of Nations, when business people get together, even on social occasions, it's usual for conspiracies against the public to be enacted. And I think that oligarchy is the bane of our society. It has been for many generations, and in many ways we're a more oligarchic society now than we were maybe 50.
What is an oligarchy?
Oligarchy means ruled by the few, usually by the wealthy. And in actual fact, there's been studies done in the US by Harvard University, I think it is, that claim fairly convincingly to my mind that the United States isn't a democracy, it's effectively an oligarchy. And I think that is actually pretty much the truth about the kind of society we live in. There's a democratic facade, there are elections of a sort, not necessarily entirely, the electoral system is certainly rigged. I think Steve and I would agree about that. But the fact is that behind the scenes, the real string pullers continue to pull strings, and in actual fact have probably got more powerful in the last 20, 30 years than they were previously.
Well, I mean, you're saying elections are rigged?
Not rigged. The electoral system is wrong. It doesn't actually allow the full expression of views. But that's not the real issue. The real issue that the City of London can destroy a government, and frequently have tried to do so. And the merchant venturers are the local version of that oligarchic power. And there have been some reforms of British society that took place in my childhood and before, but that's been clawed back pretty dramatically by the wealthy classes since then, and they pretty much run the show behind the facade of democracy. I think that's pretty obvious to anybody who looks at it objectively.
Steve Comer, former leader of the Lib Dems, do you agree with Martin about the idea of the electoral system being rigged?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, first past the post is a terrible electoral system. I mean, we had 35% of the electorate that voted Conservative, and yet they have a majority in Parliament. Well, clearly that is unrepresentative.